Cool. Well, hello. Welcome, everyone. We are running our monthly webinar today. This is something we do every month, once a month, as a general overview, just to kind of showcase Mission Control's functionality, talk a little bit more in detail about what we do as a business, how we support our customers, and go through the tool at a very high level. I've got the chat open, so if anybody has any questions throughout, please feel free to jump in and ask. Really want to try to keep this as open as possible. And because it's not a huge group, I'm happy to, jump in and answer any questions that pop up. My name is Josh. I am an account executive here at Mission Control. I manage the APAC region and also a little bit of the US, the west coast of the US. And I would say most of my customer base is based in the APAC region. So really excited to take you through this today. I'm going to start with a couple of slides. Won't spend too much time on the slides, but I do just want to talk a little bit about Mission Control in detail, and then we're going to jump straight into the demo. So I'm going to share my screen. The last time I did this, I accidentally shared the wrong one, so I'm going to 100% make sure I do it right this time. Just want to make sure I've got the chat open as well there. Okay, perfect. Cool. So Mission Control. We are a global business and we cover pretty much all parts of the world. We're made up of a decent sized group. I mentioned I'm an account executive here, so I manage sales for new business, and also I manage a customer base as well. So as an account manager, so kind of end to end. I've got a colleague named Julian. He's based in Canada, so he does pretty much exactly what I do. He's sort of my direct manager. We've got Victor Padroni. He's the head of our professional services. So when somebody comes on board and they need Mission Control implemented, Victor's your guy. And he also does other kind of like professional services work as well. So if customers are looking to optimize their Mission Control account, do any sort of customizations, need assistance, Victor jumps in and assists with that. I've got a CRO, Corey. So he oversees like the sales department and manages Julian and I. And then our CEO and co-founder, Colin. Colin's been in the Salesforce ecosystem for 20 years. Mission Control's 15 years old, so Colin is pretty much the guru when it comes to Salesforce and Mission Control together. So just a little bit about the go-to-market team. We obviously have designers and engineers and stuff, but I guess from this perspective, this is the group you need to know about. So a little bit about Mission Control. We're native to Salesforce. So when we say we're native to Salesforce, think of installing an app on your phone, right? So you've got your phone, you need an app to, I don't know, do something as an extension of the functionality it already has. We're pretty much the exact same thing. So you open Salesforce, Mission Control is an extension of the functionality. So we offer more functionality focused around project management. So essentially no logins, separate. It's all in the same window, which is good for people that are consolidating, keeps it all in one. Now, you go to a website, the App Exchange, which I'm sure, as Salesforce users, you probably know about, but if you don't know about, there's an App Exchange. And if you were to install Mission Control, you can pretty much start using it straight away, which I think is fantastic. So works out of the box. You might want to customize a few things here or there, maybe some fields, or maybe you'd want to hide or maybe remove some parts because they're not being used. It's a very comprehensive platform. But realistically, if you wanted to start using it straight away, you could install that and then it's going to work outside the box straight away. And that kind of ties in with the no implementation required as well. Now, as Mission Control is an extensive platform, we have a learning portal and a certification portal, which is also supported by a whole bunch of like training videos, webinars. We do feature highlights. We try to make sure that everybody has and gets the knowledge that they need to be able to use the platform. And then that ties in with my work as well. So I catch up with customers on a regular basis, sometimes on a weekly basis, right? Depending on how complex their needs are. But yeah, fully covered when it comes to the education piece. And then just the last piece that I'll touch on for this piece is global user support. So I mentioned we're a global company. So essentially we've got pretty much 24/7 support. I think, some weekends, not many people are doing a whole bunch, but yeah, we'll get tickets and we're able to jump on those. Now, some reasons why customers come to us. Now, I've got this report that we ran a few years back, which is an independent report, essentially talking about the different metric areas that we improve, the main ones. So you can see there's 5 total that we cover in the report. But realistically, I'm talking to customers, on a weekly basis, or potential customers, and they're saying to me, "Hey, we're trying to increase our revenue, we're trying to increase our profit, we're unsure about what our billable utilization is, right? Just basic visibility." I'm happy to share this report with anybody. If you wanted to jump in the chat and request it, let me know. Happy to shoot that through. But realistically, what we're trying to do is we're trying to improve business outcomes. When a business comes to us and says, "Hey, we don't have the visibility in what our team's utilizing, we don't have a mixture of billable and non-billable, we're trying to increase our revenue," I normally spin this report up. But realistically, yeah, we're trying to increase these metric areas for our customers. Cool. So a little bit of feedback that we get from our customers around ease of use and if it meets requirements, and a little bit around our NPS as well. So you can see there that we've got a score of 81 NPS. The industry standard, I think, is like 40% when it comes to SaaS, so really, really high NPS scores. Whenever I'm catching up with my customers outside of the work that they're doing with our customer success team, all they ever do is sing the praises of my support team. So I feel really proud to be a part of a company that really cares about our customers. And you can see there as well in the top right corner how quick it takes to go live. So about 88%, about 4 weeks, roughly 4 to 5 weeks. The 3 to 6 months one, I would say, is for much larger enterprise style complex provisioning, where we're looking at heavy customization or larger scale accounts. All right, so I'm going to show you this thing called a feature wall. Now, there's a lot of features on here. I don't want you to get too overwhelmed. Instead of going through each of these dot points and explaining, I guess, what we cover, what I would rather do is just say, the 5 areas that we cover. So resource management, project management, program management for larger scale projects that run. I've got customers that do projects that run for 2, maybe 3 years, depending on the complexity. So being able to layer, right, more complex projects, that ties in with the portfolio management. And then because we live in the Salesforce platform, from a collaboration perspective, we can leverage things like Chatter and a couple of other functions that Mission Control offers. All right, so that was all the slides that I wanted to go through. I don't want to go through too many. So I'm going to slide across now and jump into the Mission Control platform. Just going to grab my chat open, make sure I've got any questions. Okay, perfect. Cool. So I mentioned we're native to Salesforce. So looking at my account right now, you can see it looks very similar to Salesforce. It's because I'm sitting in my Salesforce account. And what I've done is I've set this up to show you some of the common objects or features that we offer at the beginning of this list. So you can see here, right, I've got Mission Control, Projects, Scheduler, Whiteboard, Gantt chart, Timesheet, Roles. Then all of a sudden you can see Salesforce objects, leads, contacts, opportunities, accounts. So we really are just an extension of functionality. This main page that you're looking at right now is what we call the Mission Control console. This is essentially a quick launch area. So I want to go do something with the Mission Control. I come to the Mission Control console, and you can see here I've got a couple of different options. So maybe I want to create a new project. So I've been working with a potential customer. They've said to me, "Hey, Josh, we're happy with what you've presented. We want to engage you in the business in running this particular project for us." I would go in and I would create a new project. Now, when I think of efficiency, I don't want to have to spin up a brand new project every time. I do have some customers that each project that they work on is bespoke or very tailored to the individual, but most of our customers, they'll utilize this clone project functionality. So I can create a project, I can mark it as a template, and then I'm engaging with the customer to do a project. I can go search for that particular template, and I can use that as my kind of foundation. The beauty of our templates as well is they're not hard coded, which I think is really good. So you can, have flexibility and make changes and additions as well. The next part that I'll show very, very briefly, I just wanted to kind of put it out there that we do have some pre-built dashboards as well. So part of being native to Salesforce, we can leverage all of the Salesforce functionality. So when it comes to reporting, dashboard creation, I can go in and I can open up a brand new report and I can pull mission control data into that report and those dashboards, which I think is such a good feature. Some people may use tools like Tableau or other kind of like reporting tools, which I think are very comprehensive, right? But at a minimum, you're going to be able to, create dashboards and reports using mission control functionality. Okay, so I like to start kind of at the foundation level when I'm explaining how mission control works. And I think the best way to start is to talk about roles. So when I install a mission control package into my Salesforce account, I'll do my license assignments, right? So I'll apply licenses to the users that are within the account. And then what I do is I create a role record for them. So the role record really underpins pretty much all of the data that sits within mission control. And you'll notice on this page here, I've got resource information. So Josh is my resource, he's a role. He's a project manager. Josh works 40 hours per week. I've set an 80% billable target for Josh, and that 40 hours per week is spread across 5 days at about 8 hours per day, right? So very, very important information. The other bits that I house as well is a billable rate and a cost rate. So when I put Josh on a particular project and I'm charging my customer, I charge them $250 an hour for Josh's time, but I pay Josh $100, right? So when I'm thinking of a project, Josh is reflecting, I've done 10 hours against this particular task. It's going to accumulate costs, which is going to give you really good visibility, especially like profit-wise as well. Now, I'm just going to go one step further into this role, just because there's a feature as part of the role which whenever I show potential customers, they kind of line up, right? Because I think not a lot of functionality out there offers this kind of segmenting. But at the bottom of this, you can see here, I've got a team assignment and I've got a skill assignment as well. So the team assignment is essentially segmenting my employees into different groups. And this is going to help me when I'm searching for the right resource for a particular project. So let's say as an example, I'm a global company, I'm engaging with global customers, and I've got an opportunity with somebody in Australia, right? When I have to go and look for a project manager or a resource that works in Australia, I would want to reflect on that resource that they're a part of the APAC team, right? So then when I go do my search, Josh is going to pop up in that search. So the team assignment I think is really, really good, as I mentioned, segmenting. Then we can go a step further and we can also apply a skill requirement. So let's say I've found my resource that's in Australia. Josh looks like a good fit. And I need him to be a UX designer or have the skill of a UX designer. So again, I'm filtering down further and further to make sure that I've got the right person for the job. So you'll see here that I've got expiry dates. So I've got construction customers that have licenses that they track in here, right? It's a very, very kind of broad platform. We do have some, I'd say, verticals or industries that we tend to work with more than others. If you jump onto our website, we've got a page where it sort of talks about the different role types that we work with. But yeah, a lot of functionality in there to get information about people. A couple of other things on this page as well. I can control what people see and what they can't see, right? So generally what happens is when somebody starts to implement mission control, they'll strip it right back. And then as they start to develop and they're rolling mission control out and they're learning new functionality, they'll start to release different features depending on what they need. So you're in full control of what they can and cannot see. And then you can also utilize Salesforce permission sets and permission set groups as well if you want to further kind of limit what they can and cannot see. All right, so next part. What I like to do is talk a little bit about how we create a project and why we create a project. So I would say maybe 85% of our customers are utilizing Salesforce opportunities. We do have some businesses that track projects internally that are not revenue generating. But most of the time when I'm talking to a business, they're utilizing Sales Cloud or some kind of like Salesforce instance. And opportunities is generally where the interaction starts. So sales team are working on an opportunity. they're moving things through the stages as they progress, right? And then once they've won the deal, they then go to their project team and they say, hey, we've won this deal. We need to organize the kickoff for this project. So the way that we like to kind of marry up with the opportunity is being able to generate a project from here. So let's say I get to the final stage and I hit close one. So I've got an automation in the back end that when it hits close one, it spins up a project automatically. And what we have done is we've just added this section down here on this page. So you can see here, generation method, project template, project start date, and then generate project. So this here, these are like mission control fields that are linked to our project object. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select opportunity as the generation method, right? Don't worry too much about the kind of detail around generation method. All you need to know is when I set this to a specific stage, or if I tick this box, it's going to create a project based on the data that's on the opportunity. So I've got my opportunity. I'm going to go find a template. So I'll just use this master one that I use most of the time. I know that the project's going to be starting next Monday. Now, I'm not going to tick this box, but if I did tick this box, right, it's going to generate a project for me. But I want to show you the automation, the way I've got the automation set up. So I've selected my template. Now, I'm the sales guy, and I'm going to go to close, and I'm going to set this as closed one because we've won the deal. And I'm going to click save. That's going to go through the stages. It's going to be marked as one. If you give that a few seconds, and if I hit refresh, you'll notice in the bottom right corner now. Oh, just get that one sec. Just gonna tick this instead. Might be a problem with my flow, but that's okay. All right. So let's just go into the project template. It should be generating. I think it might be a problem with my my flow there. So I've gone into my template, right? And this is how this is the mission control object, the project object that we've got in here. So this might look overwhelming. I mentioned that we can strip this right back, but the project object that mission control offers all these tools that are included in there. So deals one, we're about to kick off the project, and I wanted to spin up the project where I track my work. So the very first page that you see on here is an Insights tab, and we've got a number of different graphs that we offer. This is really an area that you want to go and have a quick look at to see where things are up to. So I can see who owns a project. I can see my overall budget as people start to complete tasks. So this word actions that you see, just think of tasks. We call it actions. So as people are completing their tasks or their actions, this is going to start to accumulate. If we've got any overdue items, if there's any risks that are raised, we have checklist items, which I'm going to talk about in a little second. Then down the bottom, we've got our financial data. So you can see here, I've got my overall budget. Now, as I'm completing tasks, I log time, create a timesheet, and I say, hey, I've worked 5, 10 hours on this particular task. You can see here, I've got my completed billable value. So what that means is as I start to log my time and complete tasks, this is going to start to accumulate. So again, really good area for maybe leadership or, if you're sitting in a meeting room as a group and we want to have an overview of where the project's up to, this is an awesome space to do that. Another thing that I'll point out on here as well, won't be covering it today, but we can integrate with financial systems. We've also got customers that use our invoicing and billing functionality independently outside of their accounting systems. But as I am raising invoices and invoices are being paid, we can see in the bottom right-hand corner, we've got a tracker for that as well. All right, so next part. So our work breakdown structure. This, I think, is probably the most important part of the project because really this is where we lay out the different stages that make a project. So what I've done is I've actually collapsed this at the moment. Now, I've got this at a basic level. So this is what we call a milestone. So these are my milestones that as I complete these milestones and when I get to the end, the last one's complete, my project's finished. Now, we have 7 layers of breakdown. So there's 3 more above this. We have what we call a portfolio, which sits under a Salesforce account. We have underneath the portfolio, we've got programs, which, if we're thinking of a portfolio, it's just another subcategory where we can break it down into specific projects. Then we've got projects, which is this project here, right? And then we've got phases, which is the fourth. Now, underneath phases, we've got milestones. So my blue boxes here are milestones. I'm going to expand that one time, and we can see underneath my major milestones here, I've got what we call actions. So these are my tasks here, and this is where I log my time. And then for customers that want to get really granular, I can expand it one step further, and I've got checklist items. And you can see that they're just like a tick box. So it's kind of completely up to you how you would want to lay your project structure. I've got customers that work with, enterprise businesses. They've got a portfolio of 5, maybe 10 projects. So, very flexible in how we can, break that down. Okay, so some important things on this page. So we can see here that I've got my milestone name and then I've got my action name, right? I've got my owner as well. So who in the business is going to manage this task, or who in the business is going to manage this project? So right now I've got what we call placeholder positions in here. So this is essentially me saying, hey, I know I need a project manager for this task, or I know I need a consultant for this particular task. Now, this is a template, and generally we recommend when you're creating a template, we have an action owner or a milestone owner. And I think the placeholder roles is a really cool way to do it, because it's like, hey, I know I need a resource here, but I just don't know who to apply it to yet. And also, if you're maybe a smaller business or you're doing projects where there's 1 or 2 people that are going to be owning that, we can also assign them to templates as well. So if I'm, say, running a team of project managers, I know that I've got to create a project on behalf of the team, and I need to start assigning work to individuals. There's a couple of different ways that we can do it. So if I wanted to just assign a person just to one line item, so instead of it doing the entire project, I click this blue box here. And what that's going to do is it's going to give me an assignment wizard window. Now, if we think back to when I was talking a little bit about our roles, right? And I mentioned we've got teams and we've got skills. This is where that piece comes in. So right now I've got placeholder roles. So I've got a placeholder project manager to oversee this one particular task action, but I can also add contributors as well. So that means I, know Josh is going to be running this particular task, but he needs backup. So I've got the option to add other people there too. So it's not just one person does one task. Now, what I need to do is I need to actually go and search for who the best resource is going to be for this particular task. So I can do it by team, I can do it by skill and proficiency, which I didn't mention in the other one, but we can have like a scale of how proficient they are in that skill. And then when I click this search button, it's going to go and find who the best resource is. So you can see here I've got me, or Josh Barron, as a potential project manager to do it, and I've also got Kelly to do it as well. So they're completely free during this time period. So either of them would be an awesome fit. So what I might do is I'm going to add Josh onto this action owner, and then I'm going to remove just this placeholder role, and I'm going to add Kelly as a contributor. Now you can see Josh has got 4 hours there. Let's get rid of these 2 hours here. And then, sorry, Josh has got 6 hours there. And I'm going to give 2 of those hours to Kelly. That reduces off Josh. They're sharing the workload together. Now, when I click save, that's then going to assign Josh and Kelly to this particular line item. Some other important information around here, we've got our start and end dates of the particular task, how many hours are scheduled, and then as people start to log time, it'll accumulate a completion percentage as well. Now, most of my customers, they utilize this other feature called the auto assignment. Now, the entire project is broken up into placeholder roles. So instead of me going into each individual line item and applying somebody to a particular task, what I can actually do is ask Mission Control to recommend the best resources based on their team or skill, depending on which one you want to do. When I click this assign button now, it's going to go in the background and it's going to look for a few things. So the first thing it's going to look for is availability. Are there any resources that are available during this time period? Are they working on something else? It's going to look for the team that they're a part of. Are they a part of the right team? It can look for the skill that they're a part of. And it also can look for if they're on any kind of leave or holidays as well. So we can manage our holiday leave within Mission Control. It's kind of important that you do because we want to make sure that when we're allocating work to individuals, they're available. So it's gone and it's said, cool, these are my roles that we recommend. We can see that we've got a percentage match. Now, Alana is the only real person in the account. These are all placeholders. Now, she's at 40% because she is already allocated to a whole bunch of work, but I need her because there's nobody else that's really available. I can see here that Alana is going to be good for this one as well. Might put Carissa on there just to make sure it doesn't glitch out. We'll put Stephanie on this, and then I'm going to put Josh on this task here. Now, what Mission Control is going to do is it's going to go into the background, and it's going to now apply individuals. And then when I hit the refresh button, go back to my overview tab, you'll now see that I've got proper resources that are allocated to this particular project. Now, as an individual contributor, so from my perspective, we have an email that goes out called the Daily Digest. So Daily Digest email is essentially, hey, Josh, this is what you're working on today. It's going to have all the tasks that he's working on, any overdue items, any other notifications that you want him to receive. And also, which I'm going to cover, which is the timesheet area, the work that I'm doing on that particular day or that particular week is going to pop up into my timesheet to be able to log time. Okay, so a couple of other tools that I'll cover off on here. When I'm tracking completion or any kind of progress on a particular project, there's two really kind of popular features that get used. So the first would be our Kanban board, which we call a whiteboard. And there's a couple of things that we can do from this page as well. So we can see here that my headings are different stages. So, some people have their own way of working, which is completely fine, right? Some people maybe want to work out of a Kanban board. Some people maybe want to work out of the overview. It's completely up to you. There's a lot of flexibility. So as I'm working on individual tasks, I can actually move them through the funnel, depending on the stage that they're up to. Now, I collapsed the one before, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this expand button here, and it's got a couple of options on the right-hand side that I can do. So I mentioned we can utilize chatter. So from a collaboration perspective, I might want to tag somebody in a chatter post and just say like, hey, caught up with the customer today, they raised some concerns, just thought I would flag it with you. So, we're going back to that native to Salesforce piece. We're leveraging all the Salesforce functionality. We're fully connected, right? So we can chatter from here. I can also log time. Now, there's a couple of different ways we can log time in Mission Control. This one that I'll show you is one that's used quite frequently, and then I'll show you the other page. But what happens is a timesheet option pops up. Because I am in the project, it's going to relate to the project. Because I've done it relevant to that particular task, it's going to pull through the task automatically. Now I can select a type, time log type. So, maybe it's account management, maybe it's a scoping call. I can reflect if it's based on overtime, if it's non-billable work. I can put in my completed hours. So, I did 5 hours today on this particular piece. The status is still in progress. And I can log notes on here as well. So that's one way to log time. And you can do it directly from this Kanban board, which is great. The other tool that gets utilized heavily is our Gantt chart. So most project management platforms have a Gantt chart. I'm going to show you one part of the Gantt chart which overlooks all projects as opposed to project specific like this one. But what you'll notice on the left-hand side is I've got my work breakdown structure, and then I've got my timeline here on the right-hand side. So as I expand this, I've got my milestones. And you'll notice here that I've got dependencies created between this milestone and that milestone, right? So when I'm creating a dependency, it's like, well, I know I can't actually start this functional configuration until this piece of work's finished. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a dependency between these two, and then that's going to slide out. So if I need to reschedule this piece of work at all, that's going to move out with it as well. Expanding further, because I've got my action items as well, we can see here, and we can see that I've got dependencies created through there. So really, really nice timeline view of the overall project. work breakdown structure on the left-hand side, and awesome flexibility with dependencies there. Another thing that I would say, like feature-wise, that stands out for our customers or when I'm talking to potential clients is just being able to track baselines, right? So when we're doing any kind of project retrospective, we're looking back to see, hey, what's worked, what hasn't worked. We can have a look at what the original baseline dates that we set, and we can indicate warnings as well if we're off track, if we're pushing stuff out a lot. We can export the Gantt chart as well. So if you want to export via PDF to show the customer, that option's there too. All right, awesome. The last thing that I'll quickly talk about is how we can communicate progress with customers. So we do have some businesses that have got things like a community page maybe created, or they've got some kind of like read-only licenses for their customers to be able to jump into projects and have a look at progress. But one way that we can actually share progress is through this project status report. And this can be automatically sent out as well on a weekly basis. So it's obviously got all Mission Control branding, but if you've got logos and stuff like that set up in Salesforce, we can pull through that stuff. So it's obviously company branded. But it's just a really nice PDF that we can share with customers. We can hide certain parts of this as well if you don't want them to see specific things. You're in full control. And this is, kind of linked and part of Salesforce functionality as well. But full project overview, being able to sort of see where people are up to. We can show a snapshot of the Gantt chart, which is down there. And there's a whole bunch of other things that we can add in as well. So just going back up here, you can see as well, issues, risks, change requests. So there's 0, that's why it didn't pop up on the screen, but yeah, we can include that functionality in there. One other tool that I wanted to talk about as well within a project is just around budget tracking. So just quickly going back to this, I'm just going to go back to my overview, and I'm going to reduce this quickly. And you'll notice that it's got milestone budget here. So my milestone budget on this section is my kind of entry-level budget tracking, okay? Now, if I want to track complex budgets or budget structures, we have this budget tab where I can create budget line items and then relate them back to parts of the project. So as I'm logging time, costs will accumulate. It's going to deduct off my overall budget. From a financial perspective, I think like CFOs, people in the finance department, they really love this section just to make sure that we're on track and we're not, going out of budget. So really nice complex graphs, being able to break that down further. Okay, let me just have a quick look at the chart. Okay, good. All right, so the next thing that I like to talk about is around resource allocation. So I showed you the auto assignment, so we're going to go search for the best resource for that particular project. When I think of around collaboration and, maybe we're doing a weekly call and we're trying to figure out who's going to work on what. Right? I'm the project manager, the head project manager. I've got small PMs I'm working under me, and I'm allocating work to individuals. Now, this feature called the scheduler is an amazing insight into what people are already allocated to. So this is a demo account, so it's got a lot of dummy information in here. Obviously, we're not going to make Bethany work 114 hours in a week, but essentially, you've got the ability to be able to see what people are working on months, years in advance. I mentioned earlier that we do have some customers that run like a 2-year project, right? So we really need to make sure that if we're running a 2-year project, we're creating new projects that people are available during that time. So I think it's a really good visualization of where people are allocated. We've got our traffic light system. So this is also going back to the first thing that I spoke about roles. This is going to pull from what their total hours per week is. So generally, Bethany works 40 hours per week, 8 hours per day. So for this week, she's on 80 hours, pretty much double what she's allocated. We obviously can't allocate more work to Bethany. But then in saying that, so Colin, who's a project manager, I can see he's not allocated to anything next week, so I can, assign him work. A really, really good place to be able to see that. Having a look at a couple of other views that's on here. Just give that a second to load. Um, this is our action view. So essentially what this is what people are allocated to from a task perspective. We can color code different projects so then visually we understand a little bit better. But from this page, I can actually reassign work. So you can see here, actually, I'm going to get Geordie to do this instead of Josh because Josh looks like he's super busy. And I can drag and drop, and allocate different pieces of work there. And then we've got some other just read-only kind of views too. So if you want to have a look at what kind of projects an individual's assigned to, instead of having a look at it by total hours, look at it by financial. So how much has an individual earned or what's their billable forecast for that time period. Yeah, there's a couple of really awesome features there. Alrighty, so next part that I like to talk about is the master Gantt chart. So I mentioned that we have obviously the tools that are project specific. So I showed you the Kanban board and I showed you the Gantt chart on that particular project, and it only showed me just data for that project. Now, I've also got a master Gantt chart, which is a standalone Gantt chart, where I can actually go and have a look at a number of different projects in the one screen. The beauty of this as well is I can create inter-project dependencies. So just expanding that, I can see here I've got my project overarching, I've got my milestones, and if I go a step further, I've got my actions. So this is a project here within itself with this purple bar. Scrolling down, this is a project within itself as well. So if I know that Josh is working on this project and that project, and he needs to complete this task before that task, I can create dependencies between the projects, which I think is a really awesome way to be able to have that visual timeline. And we're making sure that we're not, scheduling work over work, right? And we can export this as well, which I think is really, really good. Let me just quickly check for questions. Oh, I've got one question here. Can you have a look at projects or projects fully canned? Yes, you can. So, really good question. Thank you for that. So I'm on the Gantt chart here, but what I want to do is I want to have a look at the Kanban board. So this is having a look at all projects again, right? So you can choose what tool you want to use. Some people use the Gantt chart, some people use the Kanban board, but we can actually look at projects in the Kanban board, all projects that we're working on. So again, we're looking at planned, our status is at the top. I can come in and I can filter if I want to have a look at, just a particular project. Maybe I want to do it by project owner. So if I scroll down and I look for Josh, let's have a look at what Josh is working on at the moment. We can see here that we've got financial accumulation as well. So if the project has timesheets that are completed against it, we have the option to view all those projects in one screen. Just give me 1 second. I think okay, can we make a timing plan template when we create a new project? It can automatically jump out the template first. Can make a timing plan template. I'm really, really sorry. I'm just a little bit unsure. It can automatically jump out the template first. If you could just maybe elaborate a little bit further on that, I'd be happy to answer. If I think what you might be asking is, can we have like a timeline set within a project template, right? So I've got a start date and an end date for the different individual line items. And then if I actually go into my project settings, we can see here that I've got a project budget set. I've got different billing types. So we support all billing types as well. I know I'm kind of going on a bit of a tangent, but we can set a start and end date on this as well for the project too. So hopefully that's what you are asking. But yeah, each item, each template, I can say, if I'm doing this needs analysis piece of work for a particular customer, I know that it takes roughly 36 hours in total to complete. And here's my start, and end date there. Let me know if I answered your question. If not, feel free to type it out again. But yeah, hopefully that answered the question that you had. So yeah, just quickly touching on the Kanban board, the master Kanban board. So we're able to showcase and see all of our projects in the one screen, very similar to the Gantt chart. All right, so we're nearly done. This is the other timesheet section that I wanted to talk about. So we obviously showed the screen, which was on the Kanban board, on the card that was there. And we clicked on the timesheet option and it popped up a window, right? So that's one way to create a timesheet. The way that I would generally complete a timesheet is having a look at this screen here. So this is everything that I'm working on for this week, right? And I can see here the name of the task that I'm working on. So obviously I'm fully across, um, what I'm working on in that particular project. And as I'm completing work against that project, what I'm doing is I'm completing time. So I know on Monday I did 4 hours here, I did 1 hour here, 1 hour here, and then 2 hours here, right? So that's my total 8 hours for the day. Okay. Now we have a hierarchy when it comes to timesheet submittals and approvals. So what I can do is I can save and submit my timesheet. That's going to go to either a line manager or we specify who is going to be the approval person. And we can have a multi-layered approval process if needed. Yes, thank you. Answer my question. I'd like to store a project timing plan, and when we create a new project, we can select a template for use directly. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. So what I'll just quickly do is show you at the bottom of this project. I've got this little box here that says template, right? So this is really how we leverage all the data that we've created in the past, okay? So we can build a huge template library. And then just to go one step further, okay, our templates are not hard coded. We can remove, we can add parts if they're not needed or we need different parts. But another cool feature is if you have a look at these milestones, and when I expand this milestone, I've got a list of actions or tasks. I can actually click this load button and I can go and look for, a project and I can pick just the milestone. And then that's going to also bring in the tasks as well. So it doesn't have to be we build the template and we have to use all the tasks that are in there. I can actually cut and chop it up and add different parts in there as well, which I think is really cool. Just touching on the timesheet before we jump off. So I put my hours in, I submit that for approval. Maybe I want to add a little bit more detail. So I've just double clicked in there. I can add notes. Hey, ran this part of the task, completed most, but had an issue with something, right? So we can get really, really granular with the detail that we're adding in there. Alrighty, so I just want to ask if there were any other questions that I can assist with. We've still got a few minutes left, so happy to sort of stay on and answer anything that comes up. Let's just have a look at the Q&A in the webinar chat. Can you integrate with financial systems? Yes, we can. So technically it's an integration with Salesforce. So we're native to Salesforce, right? Generally, it would be like a middleware connector, like a MuleSoft, like a Zapier, or there's some bespoke depending on the financial system or accounting system that you use. But realistically, we should be able to push, timesheet data if you're billing based on milestones. So if you're completing different parts of the project, complete a milestone, we want to invoice the customer, we can do that as well. So to answer your question, yes, we can. But yeah, we'll require some kind of middleware, which is pretty standard for Salesforce. How about dashboard function? If we have a lot of projects running, what kind of dashboard could we generate by the overview status of the projects? Yeah, awesome question. So I showed a little bit earlier this pre-built dashboard that we've got. So we can have a look at kind of overall projects, their statuses, if they're completed, what's overdue. We can pretty much leverage all of the Salesforce functionality reporting, which is fantastic, right? So I think I actually created a report a few weeks back. So as an example, I've got a customer that I'm working with at the moment, and he sometimes has problems with the team completing timesheets, okay, which I think it's not an uncommon challenge to come across. So what he wanted to do was spin up a report that showed any completed timesheets or any completed tasks that didn't have time logged against them. So I was able to group it by project, by milestone, by the action owner, and then pull through and show how many hours completed. Obviously zero, so equals zero, but the status of that task is set to complete. So just a bit of insight into how, I guess, flexible it is. And you can see here, this looks exactly like, the Salesforce reporting system because it is, right? So I think that that native piece is really helpful. So we've got a couple of pre-built ones, which I think is really good. Profit and loss performance, action by status. And then, yeah, you've got full flexibility into being able to create what you need there. Awesome question. Thanks for submitting that. Any other questions at all? Anything else that I can answer? By the way, team, you'll receive a recording of this and you'll receive my contact details. If you would like to see a tailored demo, so when I'm engaging with a potential customer, they will share with me a project template of their own. Sometimes it's in Excel format, sometimes it's just a screenshot. But what I do is I go in and I actually create a project with that information, just so that I'm able to show you what it would actually look like with your data in there. So I'd be more than happy to run this one-on-one with you if you are interested. Just, yeah, reach out and I think I'll get an attendee list, so I'm happy to contact everybody that's joined today. And yeah, we can do more of like a one-on-one session. Any other questions that I can help with at all? By the way, let me know if I did answer that question around your dashboard and functionality. Alrighty, so look, if there's no other questions that I can help with today, thanks so much for joining, everybody. This has definitely been a good one. Thank you for shooting through some questions as well. I love being able to answer those throughout the process, so I think that's great. And yeah, please reach out. We've got the whole team here ready to jump on anything that you need, and looking forward to speaking with you soon. Thanks, guys.